harmonium, cartel player. And we have Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharane Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paskita Deshatarane. I offer my respectful obeisances unto His Divine Grace, Srila Abhayacharana Aravinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada, who is very dear to Lord Krishna on this earth, having taken shelter at the feet of the Transcendental Lord. Obeisances unto you, O spiritual master, O servant of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati. You were so kindly preaching the message of Lord Sri Chaitanya Dev and are delivering these Western countries which are filled with impersonalism and voidism. Nyaya Nilo Prema Dana Karuna Pracho. Find a better pair of cartels, those sound terrible. Nyaya Nilo Prema Dana Karuna Pracho. Eno Prabhu Kota Kela Acharya Thakur.
Eno Prabhu Kota Kela Acharya Thakur.
Eno Prabhu Kota Kela Acharya Thakur. Kahamora Swarup Rupa Kaha Sanatan. Kahamora Swarup Rupa Kaha Sanatan. Kaha Dasa Raghunatha Patita Pavan. Kaha Dasa Raghunatha Patita Pavan. Kahamora Vata Yuga Kaha Kaviraj. Ekakale Kota Kela Gora Nataraj. Ekakale kota kela gora nataraj. Asane kutibo mata anale pasibo. Goranga gonera nidhi kota gele pabo. Goranga gonera nidhi kota gele pabo. Se sabha sangira sange ye koilo bilas. Se sabha sangira sange ye koilo bilas. Se sangana paya kande narotamadas. Se sangana paya se sangana paya kande narotamadas. Ye anilo prema jana karuna prachor. Ye anilo prema jana karuna prachor. Hey no Prabhu Kota Kela Acharya Thakur. Hey no Prabhu Kota Kela Acharya Thakur. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama,
Saparashad Bhagavat Viraha Janita Vilapa. Lamentation due to separation from the Lord and his associates from Partana of Srila Narottam Das Thakur. He who brought the treasure of divine love and who was filled with compassion and mercy, where has such a personality as Srinivas Acharya gone? Where are my Swarup Damodar and Rupa Goswami? Where is Sanatan? Where is Raghunath Das, the savior of the fallen? Where are my Raghunath Bhatta and Gopal Bhatta? And where is Krishna Das Kaviraj? Where did Lord Gauranga, the great dancer, suddenly go? I will smash my head against the rock and enter into fire. Where will I find Lord Gauranga, the reservoir of all wonderful qualities? Being unable to obtain the association of Lord Gauranga, accompanied by all of these devotees in whose association he performed his pastimes, Narottam Das simply weeps. This is the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 28. Paranjana becomes a woman in the next life. Verse number 47. Being now alone and a widow in that forest, the daughter of Vidarbha began to lament, incessantly shedding tears, which soaked her breasts, and crying very loudly. Purport. Figuratively, the queen is supposed to be the disciple of the king. Thus, when the mortal body of the spiritual master expires, his disciple should cry, exactly as the queen cries when the king leaves his body. However, the disciple and spiritual master are never separated because the spiritual master always keeps company with the disciple as long as the disciple follows strictly the instructions of the spiritual master. This is called the association of Vani, words. Physical presence is called Vapu. As long as the spiritual master is physically present, the disciple should serve the physical body of the spiritual master. When the spiritual master is no longer physically existing, the disciple should serve the instructions of the spiritual master. Srila Prabhupada himself demonstrated this on a level so super excellent. It's praiseworthy for everyone and sets the example for all of time everlasting into the future in his own relationship with his beloved spiritual master, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada, who Srila Prabhupada said he only had the physical association perhaps 10 or 12 times. within a period of 14 years, of which 10 of those years, from 1922 to 1932, he had no association. He had just seen Srila Bhaktisiddhanta on the rooftop of their rented Ultadangi Junction Road temple. I accepted him immediately, not officially, but within my heart. I've met such a nice, saintly person. He immediately switched his allegiance from the so-called Mahatma Gandhi, to the mission of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, and to him personally. And then for 4 years, from 1932 to 1936, perhaps 10, 11 times. One time, Srila Prabhupada was coming to Mayapur from Calcutta, and those of you who've been to Mayapur know that you first come on the Bhaktisiddhanta Road and you pass the, among other things, the Samadhi of Chandkazi, and then you come to the Sri Chaitanya Math, which is understood to be the original fountainhead of all Gaudiya Maths, and where the Samadhi of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur is present. So some of Srila Prabhupada's godbrothers criticized Srila Prabhupada for not stopping to pay his respects to their spiritual master Samadhi and proceeding directly to ISKCON Mayapur. And when Srila Prabhupada heard about this, his remark was, they don't know that I'm not separated from my spiritual master for even a moment. And coming to this New York City in the deep, dark, cold winter of 1965 into 1966, Prabhupada writes in his diary, on Gaur Punim Day in March 1966, that the devotees in Navadvip are taking part in a grand ceremony, and I am here alone with no devotee companion. But I feel no difficulty or inconvenience, I'm paraphrasing, because I am serving the order of my spiritual master. Text 48. O best of kings, please get up. So this is Queen Vidarbhi lamenting over her dead husband's body. Get up, get up. Just see this world surrounded by water and infested with rogues and so-called kings. This world is very much afraid, and it is your duty to protect her. The previous description of King Malayadvaj is that he's likened unto the great Acharya with his devotional flag unfurled. He is victorious and conquers over all non-devotional doctrines and propounders of atheistic and nonsensical philosophy, which deviates and has nothing to do with pure devotional service. Purport: when an Acharya comes following the superior orders, every order separate from the order of the spiritual of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and his authorized representative is an inferior order, an inferior instruction. This is a story of the simple villager. He wanted to serve the greatest person, so he's seeing the village mahant. Everybody's respecting him, so let me serve him. And okay, you can serve me for a while, but then he notices that he's paying his respects to the, how does it work? Tax collector. And it goes up to governor, and then he sees that the governor is paying his obeisances to a brahmana, to a sadhu. So I want to serve the sadhu. And then he sees that the sadhu has his own personal worship, and he's bowing down to his personal deity. And he says, "Well, if you're not the greatest, then I want to." Oh my! And he says, "My dear child, the Supreme Personality of God," and he's present in the form of Lord Jagannath in Jagannath Puri. Well, I want to go to serve him. He traveled a long distance, and he gets to the gate or the door of the Jagannath temple, and it's late at night and it's cold, and he's just decided, I'm going to sleep on the front door of the temple and wait for it to open tomorrow, and I will go serve the greatest person. And it was cold, so what happened was Lord Jagannath understood that this great devotee, this very sincere person, he's not even a devotee, so to speak, yet. So this is, we should have the attitude that, a devotee is a devotee, and in their beginning or not even inceptual stages prior to them being quote unquote a devotee, the Lord sees them as devotees. So this is what this particular incident illustrates. So Lord Jagannath took off his chadar and placed it around this individual so he could stay warm while he's sleeping in the cold. So when the Pujari comes in the morning to wake Lord Jagannath, sees that Lord Jagannath's chadar is missing. What is this? Who has done this? And then they see this person and they think, oh, he's a thief. And how does the story go? Did they start to beat him, how did Lord Jagannath reveal to them, you're making a great mistake. This is my devotee. And they realized, I forget the exact scenario. Hopefully he didn't get beat, but that. So the Acharya, just like Srila Prabhupada, he thought that the cause of Gandhi was the greatest cause. Described that all the intelligent persons of India and all around the world, just like if there's some terrible situation in a country, we see people in foreign countries, they want to protest, the genocide going on over here, or this leader has got to be taken out and toppled. So people around the world, and the British already by the early 20th century had a pretty bad reputation. We got through with them here in the United States 150 years earlier in 1776, 1926. You see in the flagpole in the middle of Union Square Park that celebrates there's a name for the 150th anniversary. It's, no, that's 200 years. Anyway, whatever. So that was erected in 1926. So when Srila Bhakti Siddhanta presented the superior cause, the superior order, the superior instruction, Srila Prabhupada, who was wanting to serve the greatest and at all personal risk and expense, he switched his allegiance. And it was dedicated to his spiritual master for the rest of his life and for all of eternity. When an Acharya comes following the superior orders of the Supreme Personality of Godhead or his representative, he establishes the principles of religion as enunciated in Bhagavad Gita. Religion means abiding by the orders of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. What's that verse in the Bhagavatam? Real religious principles is enunciated by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Right. Say it out loud. Okay, fine. Religion means abiding by the orders of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Religious principles begin from the time one surrenders to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is the Acharya's duty to spread a bona fide religious system and induce everyone to bow down before the Supreme Lord. We just had the visit of His Holiness Janananda Maharaj. And who here has heard Janananda Maharaj's Prabhupada Memories of the Siddhanta series? So that Prabhupada, 3 different occasions, very powerfully instructed him of the importance of offering proper obeisances to the spiritual master. You can look it up. Go ahead.
Dharmam tu shakshat
Dharmantu Shaksha.
Bhagavad Pranitam Nivai Vidur Rashayo Napi Deva Asida Mukya Asura Manushaha Kutu Nu Vidya Dara Charanadayaha. Real religious principles are enacted by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Although fully situated in the mode of goodness, even the great rishis who occupy the topmost plants cannot ascertain the real religious principles, nor can demigods or the leaders of Siddhaloka, to say nothing of asuras, ordinary humans, Vidyadharas, or Charans.
We even see in the pastime that we're reading now, the followers of Daksha, Brigamuni, and the Brahmins, they didn't understand the real principles of religion and engaging in all, and Nandishvar and the followers of Lord Shiva certainly not, just engaging in cursing and counter cursing. And when Lord Vishnu ultimately appeared, everyone realized how far and how terribly they fell short of what is the actual reality. And induce everyone to bow down before the Supreme Lord. One executes the religious principles by rendering devotional service. Specifically, the nine items like hearing, chanting, and remembering. Unfortunately, when the acharya disappears, rogues and non-devotees take advantage and immediately begin to introduce unauthorized principles in the name of so-called swamis, yogis, philanthropists, welfare workers, and so on. We even see Bhaktivinoda Thakur praying to Lord Chaitanya that your teachings have very much depreciated. How many years? Mid 1800s, mid to late 1800s, some 250 years or so. Srila Prabhupada on you can listen on the festival series. There's many different Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur appearance and disappearance days. And there's one in particular, and there's like a ticking clock on the recording. It's like anyway. They should use their what do you call it, modern technology to filter that out. But anyway, he's describing Bhaktivinoda Thakur's lamentation and his prayer to Lord Chaitanya and the appearance of his spiritual master as the fourth son of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and so many signs, and then as Srila Bhaktisanta is growing up, the incident with the mango when he's 4 years old, memorized the entire Bhagavad Gita by heart at the age of 7, and that this is the person that has been sent from Krishna's personal staff upon my instruction. So Srila Prabhupada is saying that it is the nature of anything that is good and pure that's established in this material world. Over time, it becomes deviated, mixed with other mundane conceptions, and it requires either the Lord, and sometimes the Lord himself has to come. As we were saying the other day, Hansarupa Prabhu in the Sunday feast class, he was describing there's some living entity that just lives from from the sunset to the next sunrise, or from the sunrise, and then like a dog, 1 year of a dog is 7 of our year. It's all relative. Or the tortoise in Radhakunda has been there for the last 400 years, or if you enter the northwest corner of Washington Square Park, coming from the 6th Street or the north exit of the Washington West 4th Street subway station, don't enter the park, because that's where all the homeless scalawag and fentanyl drug addicts are hanging out. It's definitely a gauntlet you don't want to walk down. But anyway, right there is the hangman tree, where during colonial times they used to hang criminals, still existing. A big giant tree. You can see it, but walk on the main sidewalk and enter by the arch if you come that way. But if you come through the basketball courts on the 3rd Street exit, then you can enter the park from the southwest corner, no problem. So Why am I saying the relativity of time? Help me, I forgot. The relativity of lifespans. I'm trying to be a good talker, so you guys have to try to be good listeners so we can work together, you know. Oh, yes. So Prabhupada is speaking on Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's appearance or disappearance days. So sometimes it requires the Lord or his devotee to come and give it a push to get it started again, going in the right direction. So that brings us to how do we, what should we practically do, or what should we be practically doing when the beloved spiritual master disappears? And this is what's going to happen in this material world. So our devotional service will be described here coming. Prabhupada says more. Introduce unauthorized so-called swamis, yogis, philanthropists, welfare workers, and so on. Actual human life is meant for executing the orders of the Supreme Lord, and this is stated in Bhagavad Gita 9:34. Everyone who knows, let's say together, Man mana bhava mad bhakto madhyaji mam namaskaru mame vaishashi yaivam atmanam mat parayana. Engage your mind always in thinking of me and become my devotee. Offer obeisances and worship me. Being completely absorbed in me, surely you will come to me. The main business of human society is to think of the Supreme Personality of Godhead at all times, to become his devotee, to worship the Supreme Lord, and bow down before him. The Acharya, the authorized representative of the Supreme Lord, establishes these principles, but when he disappears, things once again become disordered. The perfect disciples, interesting, the perfect disciples of the Acharya try to relieve the situation by sincerely following the instructions of the spiritual master. His Holiness Giriraj Swami, in the final days of Prabhupada's presence on this planet, had a very deep concern, and he presented it to Srila Prabhupada. Said, you're here with us now, Srila Prabhupada. If so, there's a dispute or there's a question that we all can't answer or like that, you're here to settle things up. What do we do when you're gone? And Prabhupada simply said, you are a senior member of this society. You should work for the correction, but under no circumstances should you leave. This is a big, big issue, of course. Devotees have left Srila Prabhupada's movement for various reasons, with various criticisms. Even criticizing those who remain and try to do their level best to follow this instruction that's described here in this purport. At the present moment, practically the entire world is afraid of rogues and non-devotees. Krishna outlined in Bhagavad Gita the divine and demoniac natures. There are two classes of men: demons and devotees and demons, suras and asuras. This is Krishna saying. This is not mythology. This is not a storybook. This is not a fairy tale. This is reality. And they might not look, or they don't look like, the demons that we see in the classic Vedic age. They don't have like horns and tails and have red bodies and talk like. They wear suits and ties, and they speak sort of like fancy words, and they have huge amounts of money to all the various interests are all tied together. They have like all types of propaganda. Some classic demons of the modern times. They would say things like, "Just repeat the lie again and again and again, and people will believe it to be truth." For example, at the present moment, the entire world is practically afraid of rogues and non-devotees. Therefore, this Krishna consciousness movement has started to save the world from irreligious principles. We glorify Srila Prabhupada. You were so kindly preaching the message of Lord Chaitanya Dev. He didn't have to leave Vrindavan. He didn't have to take up all this risk. He didn't have to subject himself to all of this adversity, hostility, disrespect. He learned that and saw that in the person of his spiritual master. That this is the reason that I have appeared. To be a valiant warrior against all this demonism. Everyone should cooperate with this movement in order to bring about the real peace and happiness in the world. That most obedient wife thus fell down at the feet of her dead husband and began to cry pitifully in that solitary forest. Thus the tears rolled down from her eyes. Purport: just as a devoted wife becomes afflicted at the passing away of her husband, when the spiritual master passes away, the disciple becomes similarly bereaved. Text 50. She then prepared a blazing fire with firewood and placed the dead body of her husband upon it. When this was finished, she lamented severely and prepared herself to perish in the fire with her husband. And Prabhupada describes in the first paragraph of this purport an amazing incident that he personally witnessed with his own eyes, and relates this to the responsibility and the position of what he just described in this purport, the perfect disciple. It is the long-standing tradition of the Vedic system that a faithful wife dies along with her husband. This is called Saha Marana. In India, this system was prevalent even to date of the British occupation. At that time, however, a wife who did not wish to die with her husband was sometimes forced to do so by her relatives. Formerly, this was not the case. The wife used to enter the fire voluntarily. The British government stopped this practice, considering it inhuman. However, from the early history of India, we find that when Maharaj Pandu died, he was survived by two wives, Madri and Kunti. Question was whether both should die or one should die. After the death of Maharaj Pandu, the wives settled that one should remain and the other should go. Madri would perish with her husband in the fire, and Kunti would remain to take charge of the 5 Pandava children. Even as late as 1936, we saw a devoted wife voluntarily enter the fire of her husband. This indicates that the devotee's wife must be prepared to act in such a way. Similarly, a devoted disciple of the spiritual master would rather die with the spiritual master than fail to execute the spiritual master's mission. So, the devoted wife of a devotee husband, her entering into the fire, as being recommended here, is to continue and increase and accelerate the husband's mission, which is her mission, and the mission of the spiritual master to continue to preach and distribute Krishna consciousness boldly and widely, which is the same, if not better, than entering into the fire, getting fired up in Krishna consciousness. Similarly, a devoted disciple of the spiritual master would rather die with the spiritual master than fail to execute the spiritual master's mission. As the Supreme Personality of Godhead comes down upon this earth to reestablish the principles of religion, so his representative, the spiritual master, also comes to reestablish religious principles. It is the duty of the disciples to take charge of the mission of the spiritual master and execute it properly. Otherwise, the disciple should decide to die along with the spiritual master. In other words, to execute the will of the spiritual master, the disciple should be prepared to lay down his life and abandon all personal considerations. On November 14th, 1977, at 7:30 p.m., actually the exact time was 7:21 p.m. Indian Standard Time, in his room at the Krishna Balaram Mandir in Vrindavan, Srila Prabhupada gave his final instruction by leaving this material world and going back to Godhead. His departure was exemplary because his whole life was exemplary. His departure marked the completion of a lifetime of pure devotional service to Krishna. A few days before the end, Srila Prabhupada had said that he was instructing as far as he could, and his secretary had added, "You are the inspiration." "Yes," Srila Prabhupada had replied, "that I shall do until the last breathing." Prabhupada's last breathing was glorious, not because of any last-minute mystical demonstration, but because Srila Prabhupada remained in perfect Krishna consciousness. Like grandfather Bhishma Dev, he remained completely collected, noble and grave, teaching until the end. He was preaching that life comes from life, not from matter, and he was showing that one should preach with every breath he has. The many devotees who crowded the large room bore witness that up to the very end, Prabhupada remained exactly the same. There was nothing suddenly incongruous with what he had previously shown and taught them. Many devotees, they describe, they joined the movement and associating with Prabhupada's disciples and reading Prabhupada's books. And, in the mid 70s and late 70s, Prabhupada, United States and America, would visit once a year for a few days or a week, and that's it. Prabhupada was staying most of the time in India when he wasn't touring. And that meeting Srila Prabhupada for the first time, I said, wow, this is the exact same experience of reading Prabhupada's books. Or that, I wanted to meet this famous author or celebrity, and their private life or who they are as a person is different than what their book is or what their celebrity status is. But Prabhupada, the experience with everyone, completely the same. His teachings and his personal life and his personality were the exact, there was no difference, all the same. Prabhupada remained exactly the same. There was nothing suddenly incongruous with what he had previously shown and taught them. At the time of his departure, therefore, he was teaching how to die by always depending on Krishna. Prabhupada's passing away was peaceful. During the evening of November 14th, the Kaviraj asked him, "Is there anything you want?" And Prabhupada replied faintly, "Kuch icha nahim, I have no desire." His passing away was in the perfect situation in Vrindavan with devotees. A few months previously, a young girl, the daughter of one of Prabhupada's disciples, had passed away in Vrindavan. And when Srila Prabhupada had been asked if she went back to Godhead to personally associate with Krishna, he had said yes. Anyone who leaves his body in Vrindavan is liberated. Of course, Vrindavan also means the state of pure Krishna consciousness, as Advaita Acharya had said of Lord Chaitanya, "Wherever you are is Vrindavan." And this was also true of Srila Prabhupada. As Srila Prabhupada passed away in London, New York, or Moscow, therefore his destination would have been the same. As Lord Krishna states in the Bhagavad Gita, "One who is always thinking of me surely he attains me. But because Vrindavan Dham is the quintent, quintessential realm of Krishna consciousness within the universe, the ideal for departure from this world. So it was yet another exemplary feature of Srila Prabhupada's life that he went back to Godhead with Vrindavan at his last junction. Those Vaishnavas who had taken the vow never to risk leaving Vrindavan could see that Srila Prabhupada, after sacrificing everything, including the benefit of residing in Vrindavan to deliver fallen souls in the most God-forsaken locations of the world, had returned to the holy land of Vrindavan. From there, had departed to the original abode of Lord Krishna in the spiritual sky. So two things were going on. He's teaching, he's showing the primary example to pass away in Vrindavan, and he was showing all of the residents of Vrindavan, the ones that I will never leave Vrindavan, not even going to Mathura, which is just a few kilometers away. Like if you really want to go shopping or get something done, especially in those times, 45, 50 years ago, you couldn't buy it in Vrindavan. You have, no, I cannot leave Vrindavan. So Prabhupada left Vrindavan, not just to go to Mathura or even New Delhi. When Prabhupada was recording the Happening album, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, that was done at, well, I don't think it's there now, Delphi Recording Studios, which was on 46th Street in the Times Square area. And they had to wait for one rock band to finish up before it was their slot to record. So Prabhupada didn't want to stay in the recording studio, and it's a cold December day. They walked around. What is one of the most God-forsaken places that you can think of? I'll give you hints here in the Times Square. So Prabhupada walked around Times Square with his disciples, through all the flashing lights and this and that. And one lady came up to Srila Prabhupada and said, "Are you from India?" And engaged in a normal, like an ordinary conversation. Well, that's wonderful. Prabhupada said, yes. Well, that's wonderful. You have a nice day. So he delivered her by doing that, by walking in Times Square in the freezing cold. And Krishna arranged that he would go back to Vrindavan. In Udayananda Prabhu, he was friends with Pragosh. They joined in Detroit, and very wonderful devotee. He was present in Vrindavan where the plan to come to the final tour, come to London and go to New York, etc., in August of 1977. And Prabhupada remarked that, what is this just staying here? Give me inspiration. I want to be with my devotees. I want to be preaching. And said that if I pass away in New York, then you can make my samadhi on the roof. I was deadly. It was very serious about that statement. So the residents of Vrindavan could see. So he's instructing everyone. He's instructing us. He's instructing all classes of would-be devotees or Damvasis and Babajis and Pandits. All are fit to be instructed by such an acharya as His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada, whether they accept or not. Jagat Guru. Srila Prabhupada's departure was also perfect because he was chanting and hearing the holy names of the Lord, of God. Thus, the Supreme Personality of Godhead was present at Srila Prabhupada's passing, just as he was at the celebrated passing away of Bhishma Dev, who said, despite his being Equally kind to everyone, he has graciously come before me while I'm ending my life, for I am his unflinching servitor. As Lord Krishna came before Bhishma Dev, assuring him and everyone else that Bhishma was returning back to Godhead on leaving his body, so the Lord, in his incarnation of Nam Avatar. So the holy name is an avatar of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, just as the deity in the temple is an expansion, avatar, one who descends. The holy name is descended into this material world. So just as the deity in the temple and the deity service should never be neglected, so the Dharma for this age, the worship of the holy name of the Lord, should never be neglected and should never be minimized. It is the Lord's masterful way of appearing, as Lord Chaitanya said, in every town and village. As Lord Krishna came before Bhishma Dev, assuring him and everyone else that Bhishma was returning back to Godhead on leaving his body, so the Lord in his incarnation of Nam Avatar, the Hare Krishna mantra, was present for Srila Prabhupada's departure. Devotees describing who were present in the room, and there were many, said at that time the chanting, there were like hosts of higher heavenly beings in the room. The chanting was just more than just who was in the room. It was an absolutely surreal, transcendental, super mundane, mystical experience. Srila Prabhupada's life had been dedicated to spreading the holy name to every town and village. And for a month, he had been surrounding himself with the holy name. For his passing away, he especially wanted to fill the room with devotees chanting Hare Krishna, and Krishna fulfilled that wish. Srila Prabhupada therefore departed under the most favorable circumstances possible in the most sacred place, Vrindavan, surrounded by Vaishnavas chanting the holy name. An ideal spiritual teacher, acharya, always acts in such a way that others may follow his example. The Srimad Bhagavatam states, these great souls who cross over the ocean of birth and death by taking shelter of the boat of the lotus feet of Krishna, miraculously leave the boat on this side for others to use. And Srila Prabhupada's disappearance, by its perfect example, affords all conditioned souls the means for meeting the greatest of all dangers. An auspicious death is not merely a matter of psychological adjustment so that one may die without regret or without becoming unduly upset. The real point is that at the time of death, the soul must leave the body and take its next birth. Only the Krishna conscious soul can leave this world of birth and death and attain an eternal, blissful life in the spiritual world. Therefore, one's life is tested at death. Death means the soul cannot stand to live in the body anymore. Whatever the material cause may be, the situation has become unbearable for the soul, and leaving the body causes great distress. Death is painful because the eternal spirit soul is placed in the most unnatural situation, although he is eternal and should not have to die. So we keep in mind that Srila Prabhupada's, what we could say, the analyzed medical condition was an extremely painful one, but Srila Prabhupada never exhibited any symptoms of suffering terrible pain. Quite to the contrary, when devotees would come, he would ask about their welfare and the welfare of the devotees from the temple that they came from. Are you eating good prasadam? Is everything all right? Brahmananda Prabhu, one of Prabhupada's earliest disciples, he was there in Vrindavan and caught some sickness like a flu and was absent for a week. And Prabhupada, and when he finally came back, Prabhupada couldn't see very well. And Brahmananda was chanting, said, "Who is that?" It is Brahmananda. Said, "Come here to the bed." Said, "So you are sick? Are you okay?" And Brahmananda describing this, he began to cry that here's Srila Prabhupada in this condition, and he's asking about me. I'm a young man, and I got some type of fever and flu or something, and he's concerned how I'm doing. Over the last months of his life in this world, Srila Prabhupada taught how it is possible to meet death step by step in Krishna consciousness. In his last days, he told one of his sannyasis, "Don't think this isn't going to happen to you." Prabhupada came, so that's the young people. They think that it'll just, that this is it, and it's going to go on like this forever, and let's just have a good time. Don't think that this won't happen to you. Prabhupada came into this world on Krishna's request to teach us how to live a pure life of Krishna consciousness. That includes how to finally pass away from this world to an eternal life. While there was nothing lamentable for Srila Prabhupada in his departure from the world and going back to Godhead, it was certainly lamentable for his followers and for the people of the whole world who became bereft of the presence of their greatest well-wisher and benefactor. Srila Prabhupada had written in a Srimad Bhagavatam purport, when the mortal body of the spiritual master expires, the disciple should cry, exactly like the queen cries when the king leaves his body. At the departure of his own spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada had written, "On that day, O my master, I made a cry of grief. I was not able to tolerate the absence of you, my guru." And so, on November 14th, 1977, as the powerful news spread around the world, those who knew and loved Srila Prabhupada were gripped by a fearful, unrestricted grief. They saw everything around them in the overwhelming atmosphere of separation from Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada's disciples were already carrying out his instructions, but now they would have to do so without the Vapu, without the opportunity of regularly seeing and being with him. At first, this was very difficult for them to face, but those who were sincere soon realized that Srila Prabhupada had, upon his departure, given them the greatest gift of all, service and separation. Service and separation is the highest realization in ecstasy. That was the teaching of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in regard to Lord Krishna and his foremost devotees, the gopis of Vrindavan. When Krishna left his beloved gopis and went to Mathura, never to return to them in Vrindavan, the gopis and all the other residents of Vrindavan wept piteously in separation. They so much loved Krishna that they could not live without him, and to maintain their lives, they began to constantly remember and discuss his name, fame, form, and entourage. By constantly remembering him in love and by anticipating his return to Vrindavan, they achieved an ecstasy of union in separation, which Gaudiya Vaishnava scholars declare to be superior even to the ecstasy the gopis felt in Krishna's presence. Because Krishna is absolute, even remembering him or chanting his name puts the devotee into direct contact with him. But because there is simultaneously a feeling of separation from him, there is an added dimension of inconceivable simultaneous union and separation. This is the epitome of Krishna conscious realization. Prabhupada's followers knew this principle of service. What is that? In separation, technically known as Vipralambha Seva, but to most devotees it was a theoretical realization. Before one can feel intense loving separation from Krishna, one must first feel intense attraction to him. But for the conditioned soul who has forgotten and abandoned Krishna and has come to this material world under the spell of Maya illusion, for him, separation from Krishna is based on complete ignorance and forgetfulness. When Srila Prabhupada departed from the world and left his disciples to carry on his mission, they immediately realized union with him in separation. He was gone, but he was still very much present. Ansarupa Prabhu was mentioning his association with Harikesh when he was just a rank and file brahmachari in the Henry Street Temple. And Prabhupada noticed his qualification and uh, practically uh, he was responsible for so much book distribution in what was formerly, after World War II, Stalin seized half of Europe and made it communist. Winston Churchill, a great iron curtain has fallen on the European continent. Ronald Reagan, Mr. Gorbachev, take down this wall. You can see a piece of this wall in Battery Park City, if you care to go and see. So the Christmas Marathon of 1977, November 14th, and the marathon starts like 2 weeks later. So he was asked, Tarikesh, so are things, it's going to be more of a subdued marathon this time. And his response was, it won't be business as usual or even less than usual. It will be business more than usual. This realization was not a pretension or a myth, nor was it sentimental, psychic phenomena, telepathy, communion with the dead, or so on. It was a completely substantive, practical, palpable reality, a fact of life. Srila Prabhupada had given them personal service, and now they would continue that service. Prabhupada was still present through his instructions, and all the nectar of his direct association and all the nectar of Krishna consciousness they had given and shared with them was still available. Service and separation from Prabhupada's disciples was undoubtedly a fact. Otherwise, now that they were without his personal presence, how were they able to sustain themselves in spiritual life? And that's true for all of us who have never met Srila Prabhupada or are coming to Krishna consciousness decades after his physical departure. And the more that time passes, there's one devotee, I believe, Narahari Prabhu, he said, that his father was a very good man, or stepfather actually, married his mother, who was widowed, and raised 3 children who weren't his, and very good man. And he passed away however many years ago. And he thinks of him from time to time, but less as the decades go by. But Srila Prabhupada, he's been got the more the time passes, the more I think of him, the more deeper I'm thinking of him, the more constantly I'm thinking of him. So the more that time goes by, like Prabhupada said, my movement will be the main source, what did he say? Will be the main religious on this planet for 10,000 years. So this perception of the glory of service and separation to the founder Acharya, the importance and the greatness, the grandeur, etc., will become more and more beautiful and stronger as time goes by. Time deteriorates everything in the material world, but time in this world, spent in devotional service, just it increases the value and glory on all different levels. The fact that they continue as before increased their feelings of devotion and even increased their serving capacity, meant that Srila Prabhupada was very much still with them. And Srila Prabhupada's last instructions was the lesson of how a human being should die. He now taught beyond dying how to practically implement the highest philosophical teachings of Gaudiya Vaishnavism. And actually, disciples would ask Srila Prabhupada about advanced stages of devotional service. And Prabhupada just kind of allayed their fears or their over concern. You don't have to worry about this now. The spiritual master will instruct you when you're ready automatically. Even when you're gone, yes. Different devotees who had Prabhupada's association very briefly when they were very young and now have spent 4 or 5 decades in the service afterwards described how Prabhupada has appeared to them in various ways, dreams and other ways, and have instructed them further and further, more and more. So how much if you look at that, how much advancement did you make in 45 years as opposed to the 5 years you were with Srila Prabhupada? So it's not that one is the association during Prabhupada's, although invaluable. You can look at the second memory of Yogeshwar Prabhu. He made this maybe 3 or 4 years ago. And he was relating, his experiences with Srila Prabhupada that he's been meditating on for so many years. And he's giving him a mature realization of what happened when he was a young man and the lessons he had understood at that time. Now thinking about it, now that he's in his 70s, this realization gave the devotees great hope that Srila Prabhupada and the revolutionary life of Krishna consciousness he had taught with him were not finished upon his departure. Remember, Krishna consciousness movement is the topmost revolutionary movement. What is the definition of revolution? To revert back to the original. What is it? Krishna consciousness is not an artificial imposition on the mind. It is the original consciousness of the living entity. The revolutionary life of Krishna consciousness had brought with him were not finished upon his departure. Often when a great personality dies, his contribution collapses. But Srila Prabhupada's presence remained and expanded, sustaining his devotees' lives. He was still in charge. And we will conclude. Srila Prabhupada's life did not end on November 14th, 1977. And we hope that the readers of Srila Prabhupada Leelamrita, which includes anything and everything, topics about His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada, his life, his teachings, his example, through pictures, through videos, through recordings, through books, everything, will not feel that they have finished their connection with these things, with this literature, by having read it once. Srila Prabhupada Leelamrita and everything about Prabhupada can be read regularly from beginning to end, over and over again. Our hope is that by hearing about Srila Prabhupada, the reader or associator will become himself a Prabhupada Anuga, a follower of Srila Prabhupada. We can wish no better fortune, blessing upon anyone. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So we will come together again for hearing offerings from the devotees, and we'll have the standard worship of Srila Prabhupada on this day with Mangalacharna, Pushpanjali, and Guru Puja feast. And then in the evening time, of course, we're not going to do the India time, but on New York time, a final Guru Puja this evening. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna.